Let's take a look at Nextdoor Holdings, ticker NXDR. It's up 43.5% in the last 5 days, up 8.84% today, but has been selling off since it hit that 3.5 mark. So is this a buy? Is it a hold? Is it a sell? Let's take a peek. So this is the linear chart right here. And the first thing that I notice is that this stock appears to be in a downtrend. You know, if you pull up the chart for Google or Apple or Amazon or Microsoft, you'll notice it's in an uptrend like this. Okay, so generally speaking, I wouldn't be buying and holding a company that's chart looks like this over a long time horizon, unless you have really strong conviction and know something that I don't know. But I will say this: it looks like it's about ready to wake up. All right, we charted it like this. So we looked at these two bottoming candles here. We connected them like that. We pulled up the parallel channel, and essentially, what do you know? If you follow this top all the way down at this angle, well, you basically get the resistance from this week, from today. So no coincidence that we ran into resistance around, what, $3.70. Does that mean that Nextdoor is destined to fail? I would not think that that's the case. I think that once it gets above that level, there's really some big potential to the upside. I mean, if you believe in doing Fibonacci retracements, the case could be made that like the next target is $5.30. After that, $7.88. Then you get to the 0.5 fib at 9.93, the 618 fib at 11.97, the 786 fib at 14.88. And then at some point, if you really believe, you would look for it to test this previous all-time high. Now, again, I think this is more a product of the right financial conditions in 2021. If you guys remember, like small caps absolutely flew. We had interest rates cut to zero. Business cycles topped out. A lot of these macro correlations for small cap companies. What is the cap market cap? So it's 1.2 billion. What does that make it, like a mid cap? I don't know what the cutoff is for a technical small cap versus mid cap. Definitely not micro cap. Either way, IWM has been looking strong lately. The stocks like Nextdoor that trade kind of as a function of that. I don't know if it's in IWM. You would expect to also start to see waking up if the macro kind of broad environment for small caps, for things like cryptocurrencies, altcoins, Bitcoin, which I'm bullish on heading into next year. You know, if that's going to be the case, you would expect to see things like this. So I think Nextdoor is the first, probably of not, I don't want to say many, but you know, again, it's going to be, just remember 2021. All right. Cause I don't want, this is not financial advice. All right. But, if you remember, it didn't really matter. Like these companies could be, you know, majorly in debt, not turning a profit, and the stock market still pumped them because of the easy financial conditions. I don't know if that'll happen again, but you know, this is what the start of it looks like right here. All right. Let's go to Nextdoor log scale and let's do some channels on this chart. If I connect the tops like this, pull it down to the bottom, we get not a clean setup because it misses. Like I like it better when these two align, and that does not really align. It makes me second guess. Also, it comes up short here. So I'm not a huge fan of how that looks. Trust me, if you've done this enough, you get used to seeing the symmetry respected. So why don't we go ahead and try connecting? Well, actually, how about this? We connect this top to this top here from July 2025, pull this down, kind of had a little bit of like a fake breakout in July 2025. Let's do something like that. Does that align better? You be the judge. Again, kind of coming up short here on that 50% line. Can we figure this out? How about here from the bottom to here, pull this up to the top? That to me looks like a better respecting of the, you know, again, we have the tops here. We came up short here. So this would at least make me think Nextdoor is destined to tag that 411 mark, playing off the bottoms here and here, respecting the 50 line, respecting the 50 line. And then whenever I see like a departure where you're aiming for hitting the top end, I want it to at least come from that 50 line, which is why I didn't like the way we initially drew it. So this to me kind of tells the story. And if you have any faith in this company at all whatsoever, like you definitely expect it to get up here to this top of this channel at 410. Again, now if you go off the linear chart, you can kind of see why we probably ran into what became resistance here today at, what did it ultimately end up being at? 370. Okay, so it's not showing up here on the log chart, but I do think that there's something to this log chart, guys. And, you know, write this down, check me on it in the future. What I would expect then is the next push to take us to like 411 And after that, that is when you would, I mean, theoretically, not financial advice, right? I guess I should say this is when I would be looking to go long. I would set an alert here on the bottom of this channel that I just drew. Okay, and I would just say Nxdr go long. You know, and just that's a note to myself, because at this point, you know, we would have bought it maybe at the 50 line at $1.60 and then sold up here. Not based on the log chart again. On the log chart, you would sell at 411, but when it breaks and closes above 411, which will probably be a gap and go if we're being realistic, it's just how these small caps tend to move. You know, the next target is up here at this midpoint, you know, $10. Okay, above there, $23. That's how this works, you know. But again, it's can be somewhat about the company, but in most cases, these small caps, it's about the right financial conditions. And I do believe there's reason to believe that we could be setting up for a really nice 2026. All right, I like to do a chart where I just look for rhythm, for pulses. You know, it's almost like a sine wave here, you know, on these stocks. Not all of them have it, but I looked at this big kind of run up that it had in 2021. You know, it topped really quickly. That one daily bar took it from 1155 up to 1859. So that was insane. And that was the top. And then it kind of sold off. And basically what I did is I looked at the top and I looked at the bottom. Okay, so from the top to the bottom, 511 days. So then I just went out to the future, 511 days. And what do you know? Again, call it coincidence, call it whatever you want. But if you literally take the amount of time from the top to the bottom and you push outwards that amount of time, and you just bought blindly right there, which I'm not saying anybody should do, but if you did that, you literally bought in basically at the bottom around $1.52, and it ultimately ran up to 370 so far. So I'm not saying that there has to, I mean, again, it's one of these things where I do this as a part of my technical analysis on whatever the company is that we're looking at. You don't always see something. In this case, you got basically perfect symmetry here on the Nextdoor chart. And the last thing I would say is the monthly RSI right here. It's looking like that. It looks very strong in terms of the monthly RSI. Above resistance, kind of in uncharted territory, although I guess you could say it would be fair to connect this top to that top and say that it has a little bit further to go actually before it hits a true resistance, which would be that gap right there to close. Maybe that pushes it up to like 411 again before it needs to kind of cool down. And again, when you see, like, hopefully you guys, hopefully this is resonating, right? So we're saying maybe it hits that monthly RSI resistance when it goes from where it's at currently, $2.77, back up to this 411 resistance. And then it needs to probably, you know, come back, reset, consolidate, and then push. Where the big push is going to come, or the big buy signal, the next big buy signal, if it happens, is going to be, is when it breaks through this, okay? And then target's going to be up here. So you're talking about buying at, you know, this is just me mousing over and looking at currently, but it would be like buying at 289 and getting a chance to sell at like 881. And I'm not saying it happens instantly, right? But that would be the thought process behind this. So the pulse telling you, hey, this could be a good entry to buy, even though that was technically in the past about a week ago. The monthly RSI there showing a little bit more room to run. You would expect it most likely to bounce here. I mean, literally, check back in too. Check my work if you're watching this in the future. I'd expect it to do something like this. Push up. This would probably be 411. Come back down, bounce off the top of this, and then push higher again. You know, the more time, the further it has to run.
What would it be worth to you to get access to my trade alerts that are based on high time frame, high probability setups in the charts and momentum oscillators? You'll also get access to me to request new charts or updated existing charts. And we're going to establish high time frame price targets that could be either to the upside or the downside. I then set up automated alerts in TradingView, and Market Symmetry Pro members are alerted immediately when they trigger. So if that sounds like something that would benefit you and your trading or investing, I look forward to seeing you inside.